The Royal Academy of Virelia stood on a floating island made of shining crystal and silver metal. It was a place where the brightest minds from hundreds of worlds came to study energy, language, and life itself. Its tall towers glowed at night and its halls hummed with quiet power. Among the many alien races that walked those halls, only one human worked there. His name was Elias Grant, a quiet man with kind eyes and worn hands. He wasn't a scientist or a noble guest. He was the janitor. Every morning before the twin suns rose, Elias would push his small cleaning cart through the shining corridors. The floor tiles reflected the light like mirrors, and he could see his tired face staring back at him as he worked. The Virelians, tall and silver-skinned with glowing blue eyes, often walked past without noticing him. To them, humans were a new species, weak, emotional, and still young compared to their ancient empire. But Elias didn't mind. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here for two small reasons that meant everything to him. His daughters. The hidden garden, when his shift ended each day, Elias would take a secret path that led behind the academy, to a quiet garden filled with silver-leaf trees and soft glowing flowers. It was a peaceful place hidden from the busy world, and there, waiting for him under a crystal arch, were Tira and Sen, his adopted daughters. They were both Virelian children, not more than 8 years old, with pale skin that shimmered faintly under the light. Their eyes were gentle and bright, but they could not hear. From birth, both had been deaf, unable to understand the sounds their world was full of. Many saw them as unfortunate, even broken. But Elias never saw them that way. When he first found them 2 years ago, abandoned near the city's lower rings, he saw only 2 frightened little girls who needed care. He had taken them in without a second thought. The academy allowed him to keep them quietly, thinking it was harmless. To most, they were just orphans the janitor looked after, but to Elias, they were his whole world, a father's lesson every evening when his work was done. Elias would kneel on the grass with his daughters and begin their lessons. He taught them not with words, but with hands, light, and love. He used signs, simple movements with fingers and expressions, part human sign language, part Virelian hand gesture. It took time, but little by little the girls began to understand. They learned what it meant when Elias touched his chest, love. When he moved his fingers in a circle and smiled and together. When he pointed to the stars and traced a line, dream. Every new sign was a small miracle. The girls' eyes would light up with pride, and they would laugh silently, their small hands moving fast as they tried to repeat what he showed. Sometimes they made mistakes and giggled. Sometimes they got frustrated and frowned, but Elias never lost patience. "It's okay," he would say softly, even though they could not hear. His voice was calm, his smile enough to tell them everything was fine. He had once been an engineer back on Earth before the human colonies fell into chaos. When he lost everything, his family, his home, he took a simple job among the stars, hoping to find peace. Instead, he found purpose in the eyes of 2 alien children who called him father with their hands. The sound of light, Elias was more than just a janitor. He was an inventor in secret. Using broken parts he collected from the academy's trash, old sensors, bits of crystal, and spare energy cells. He built small devices that could turn sound into light. He called them sound orbs. When placed near a vibration, they glowed and pulsed gently, showing rhythm as color. He used these orbs to help Tira and Sen see music. He would hum softly, and though they couldn't hear, they watched the orbs flash in soft patterns, blue for low tones, gold for high ones. Their small faces would brighten as they watched the dance of color. Once Sen reached out and touched an orb, feeling its tiny vibration against her hand. She looked at her father and signed clumsily, "Music?" Elias smiled wide. He nodded and signed back, "Yes, music. You can see it." In that moment, the little girl's joy filled the garden more than any sound could. Lonely but full of hope. Despite the peace of their garden, life wasn't easy. Some of the other workers whispered that Elias was strange, a human who spent time with alien children instead of his own kind. A few scholars laughed when they saw him making gestures, calling it pointless mimicry, but Elias didn't care. He knew something they didn't, that communication was more than sound. It was understanding. At night, when his daughters were asleep, he often sat by their side, watching the stars beyond the glass dome above. He would think of Earth, of oceans, wind, and the sound of rain. His daughters would never hear those things, but he promised himself they would still feel them. He wrote a small journal each night, recording new signs they invented together, like sky taste for the way wind felt, or heart bright went for happiness. The watcher in the halls one quiet evening, as Elias was cleaning the grand library, he didn't notice that someone was watching him. High above, from the golden balcony, an advisor of Queen Varella observed the human janitor with curiosity. He had seen Elias collect discarded parts and leave with them. He had heard rumors that the human was teaching children with strange movements that light itself danced in his lessons. The advisor found it odd but harmless. Still, he reported it to the queen as all unusual things were. The queen, known for her calm wisdom, listened with interest. "A human teaching deaf children?" she said softly. "Without sound?" The advisor bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." Using gestures and lights, the queen's silver eyes gleamed. "Bring me more details," she said. "If true, this is fascinating." And so, while Elias continued his quiet work unaware, the Queen of Varelia herself began to take notice. Dreams beneath the twin moons that night. In the hidden garden, Elias finished his work early and sat with his daughters. The sky above shimmered with twin moons, one blue, one white. He took out 3 sound orbs and set them before them. "Tonight," he said softly, "we make a song for dreams." He hummed and the orbs began to glow. The girls laughed silently, waving their hands through the light. The colors danced on their faces, gold, blue, pink, green. Tira signed slowly, "Father, light happy." Elias's heart swelled. He signed back, "Yes, light happy." Sen made a new sign, circling her finger over her chest, then pointing upward. "Heart to sky." Elias paused. He smiled. "That's a new one," he signed. "Heart to sky. It means hope." And as they played with their glowing orbs under the moonlight, their laughter, though silent, filled the air with a warmth no sound could match. In that moment, Elias didn't feel like a janitor. He felt like a teacher, a father, and a builder of bridges between worlds, a promise in the night. Before leaving the garden, Elias knelt and looked at his daughters. He signed slowly, "One day everyone will understand you. Not with ears, but with hearts." The girls nodded, though they didn't fully understand. But one day soon his promise would come true, in a way none of them could imagine. For far away, in the shining palace at the heart of the empire, Queen Varella had decided something that would change their lives forever. She would visit the academy herself. And when she did, the universe would see a human janitor teach the royal heart something no technology ever could. The golden palace of Queen Varella floated above the Varelian capital like a shining sun. Its towers touched the clouds, and its walls reflected every shade of light from the twin suns. Inside, the Queen of 1,000 Worlds sat in silence, listening to the daily reports from her royal advisors. But that morning, one report caught her attention. Her old advisor, Loren, bowed deeply and said, "Your Majesty, there is something unusual happening at the Royal Academy. The human janitor, he is teaching." The Queen raised an elegant silver eyebrow. "Teaching? A janitor?" "Yes, my Queen," Loren said carefully. "He is often seen with 2 deaf Varelian children. He uses gestures, lights, and something like rhythm, though they cannot hear. The scholars call it strange, but it seems to work." The Queen leaned back on her shining crystal throne. She was a wise ruler, known across the stars for her calm and fairness. But she was also deeply curious. "A human who teaches without sound," she said softly. "That is not strange, and that is remarkable." Loren bowed again. "Shall I send someone to question him?" The Queen smiled faintly. "No, let us watch first. Sometimes understanding grows better from observation than from command." The Queen's curiosity. For days, small silent drones floated around the Academy's gardens, watching, recording. The Queen did not wish to disturb Elias or the children. She wanted to see truth, not a performance. What she saw in those recordings touched her deeply. The drones captured a human man sitting under glowing trees, patiently signing words to 2 small girls. His rough hands, marked by years of work, moved gently and carefully. The children's faces lit up each time they understood a new word. He showed them how light could sing through color. He laughed even though they could not hear him. He wiped their tears when they failed. He encouraged them with smiles. The queen replayed those moments many times. For all her empire's science and knowledge, she had never seen communication so pure. What drives him? She asked herself quietly. He gains nothing, yet gives everything. Life of a humble man while the queen watched from afar. Elias continued his quiet life, unaware of her growing interest. Each morning he arrived early, sweeping the grand library floors where scholars studied the mysteries of light energy. The alien students barely noticed him. Some even left small messes behind, expecting the human to clean after them without complaint. But Elias didn't mind. As he swept, he often thought of new ways to help his daughters understand the world. He had built new light orbs, smaller, smarter versions that reacted to hand motion. When he waved his palm, they glowed softly, responding to his movement. He planned to use them to teach his daughters how rhythm and emotion could blend, how every gesture could become part of a larger story. To him, language wasn't just sound or signs. It was connection. He remembered his late wife back on Earth, a music teacher who used to say, "When words fail, rhythm still speaks." He smiled sadly at the memory. She would have loved to see this, he whispered. Two bright souls that evening, Elias met Tira and Sen in the garden again. They ran toward him, their silver hair shining in the moonlight. Both carried small flowers they had picked for him. He laughed softly and knelt down. "Thank you, my stars," he said, taking the flowers and tucking them in his shirt pocket. Then, using their sign language, he began the lesson. Today, he signed. We learned feelings. He made the sign for happy, both hands rising with a smile. The girls copied, giggling silently. Then he showed sad, hands dropping and eyes soft. They followed, though they didn't like that one as much. Sen made a mistake and mixed the signs for angry and hungry, which made Tira burst into laughter. Elias couldn't help but laugh too. He touched their shoulders gently, signing, "It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes help us grow." Then he took out his newest invention, 3 glowing light orbs. "Watch this," he signed. He placed them in a triangle and waved his hands above them. The orbs pulsed, changing color. Blue meant calm. Red meant strong emotion. Green meant joy. Tira's eyes widened. She pointed to the green orb and signed, "Me." Elias smiled proudly. "Yes, that's you." Full of joy, whispers through the halls unbeknownst to Elias. Some of the academy scholars were starting to talk about him more seriously. "He has developed an entire system of gesture and color," said one. "It might be a new form of learning." "It's primitive," said another. "The queen will never waste time on a janitor's tricks." But their whispers reached the ears of Headmaster Lirav, who was a kind old Varelian with silver horns. He had always respected Elias's quiet dedication. "Sometimes," Lirav said gently, "wisdom comes from places we least expect." He decided to send a report to the palace, a detailed one describing the humans' progress. And that report landed directly in the queen's hands. The next morning, as she read through it, Queen Virella's heart stirred. The more she learned, the more she admired this human. A janitor teaching deaf children through light and motion. She said softly, "We call ourselves advanced, yet none of us ever thought of this." She stood up from her throne and looked toward the shining horizon. "I must see it myself." The Queen's journey. Without grand announcement, the Queen decided to visit the Royal Academy in secret. She took only 2 guards and a single advisor, Loren. The journey to the Academy was quiet. From her skyship's window, the Queen watched the cities below. Towers, bridges of glass, glowing rivers. Her people were proud of their perfection, yet she felt something missing, something human, something small and beautiful that her empire had forgotten. Loren spoke softly beside her. "Your Majesty, do you truly wish to meet this human?" "Yes," she replied calmly. "I have met kings and scientists, but never a man who teaches with his heart." A simple evening. That same evening, Elias was once again in the garden. The twin moons hung above, casting soft light over the grass. His daughters were busy arranging the orbs in a circle, laughing in their silent way. He had no idea that the Queen's ship had landed just beyond the academy walls. As he began the lesson, he didn't see the royal guard step quietly through the garden gates. He didn't notice the Queen herself walking slowly behind them, her long silver robe trailing softly across the ground. He was too focused on his daughters. He signed, "Today we learn a new word, dream." He pointed up to the sky, where stars shimmered like scattered gems. The girls looked up too. Elias traced a shape in the air with his hands, and a wave, a spark, a rising motion. Dream means reaching for something beyond. The girls copied him carefully. Tira smiled wide and signed, "Dream." "Father?" Elias laughed softly, tears in his eyes. "Yes," he said, voice trembling. "You're my dream." At that moment, Queen Varela stopped walking. She stood still behind a tree, watching in silence. The queen watches. The sight before her was unlike anything she had ever seen. A human man in a simple uniform, his hands moving with grace and patience. Two little girls glowing with joy as colors danced around them. It wasn't science or magic. It was something purer. Her guards waited for her signal, but she raised her hand, no movement. Her silver eyes glistened in the moonlight as she whispered, "He teaches through love, not duty." For long minutes, she stood there quietly, frozen in awe. She had seen empires rise, machines think, and stars die. But she had never seen communication so alive, so full of meaning. When Elias made a small mistake with the orb and it flickered out, the girls laughed soundlessly. He smiled, fixed it, and kept going. Even failure, she realized, was part of his lesson. Gentle persistence, human warmth, the decision when the lesson ended. Elias gathered the orbs, kissed both girls on their foreheads, and signed, "Sleep now, my stars." They hugged him tightly before running toward their small home beside the garden. Only then did Queen Varela step forward. The guards followed, their armor glowing faintly. Elias turned surprised. He dropped his cleaning cloth in shock. He recognized her instantly, the Queen of Varelia herself. Before he could speak, she said softly, "Do not be afraid, human. I came not to command, but to understand." Elias bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I didn't know you were—" She lifted her hand gently. "I have seen your lessons. You have created something beyond sound, a bridge between hearts. You have done what all my scholars could not." Elias stood speechless. The queen smiled. "Tomorrow you will come to the palace. I wish to learn from you." Then she turned and left, her robe trailing through the glowing garden. Elias stood under the twin moons, stunned and breathless. His daughters slept peacefully nearby, unaware that their quiet lessons had reached the highest throne in the galaxy. And so began the moment that would change not just his life, but the language of an entire empire. The morning light spread softly over the Royal Academy of Varelia. Its towers sparkled as the twin suns rose higher in the sky. Students hurried through crystal halls and drones hummed quietly above them. But the usual calm was different that day, because the queen herself was coming. The news spread quickly among the staff. Everyone prepared nervously. The headmaster ordered the corridors polished, banners cleaned, and every student to behave perfectly. No one knew the real reason for her visit, only that she wished to observe something unusual. Only one person had no idea what was happening: Elias Grant, the human janitor. He arrived as always, pushing his small cleaning cart down the shining hallways. He greeted the workers kindly, humming a small tune under his breath. To him, it was just another ordinary day, a day to work, to teach and to smile. But fate had something else planned. A nervous morning, the headmaster, Lirav, came to Elias near the garden gate, his long silver robe shining faintly. "Elias," he said softly, "Her Majesty the Queen will visit today. Stay close to your post and keep everything tidy. The garden especially, she may walk there." Elias blinked. "The Queen here?" Lirav nodded. "Yes, no need to worry, my friend. Just do as you always do." Elias smiled nervously. "I will, sir." As the headmaster left, Elias looked toward the garden, the quiet place where he taught his daughters each evening. He hoped the Queen wouldn't mind if they met there later. It was their special place, and the girls loved it more than anything. Two little sons. When his shift ended in the afternoon, Elias washed his hands and headed to the garden. The air smelled of sweet crystal flowers, and small insects shimmered in the light. There, waiting near their favorite spot, were Tira and Sen, his two daughters. Their faces brightened when they saw him. They ran into his arms, both signing quickly. "Father!" "Father," Elias laughed, holding them close. "My stars," he said softly, even though they couldn't hear. You look so happy today. He took out 3 light orbs from his bag, small spheres that glowed with faint colors. Ready to learn? He signed. Both nodded eagerly, their silver hair catching the sunlight. He began their lesson. The lesson begins. Elias set the orbs in a row and activated them. Blue, green, and gold lights shimmered across the grass. He signed. Today we learn about courage. He touched his chest, then made a fist near his heart. The sign for courage. The girls copied carefully, their small fingers trying to match his movements. Tira tilted her head and signed, "What is courage?" Elias smiled. He picked up the gold orb and let it rest in his palm. Courage, he signed slowly, is when you are afraid but still do what is right. He pointed to his daughters. When you learn even though others said you cannot. When you smile even when the world is loud. That is courage. Sen touched his hand gently and signed, "Like you?" Elias chuckled softly, shaking his head. "No," he signed. "Like you two. You are the bravest." The girls laughed silently, and the light orbs pulsed happily in response. None of them noticed that the queen had already entered the garden. The queen's entrance, Queen Virella, moved silently among the trees, her long robe brushing softly against the ground. Her silver crown glimmered under the twin suns, and her blue eyes shone like calm water. 2 royal guards followed at a distance, careful not to disturb her. When she reached the edge of the garden, she stopped. Before her, she saw a simple scene: a human man kneeling on the grass, his daughters around him, their hands moving gracefully in the air. The orb's lights danced on their faces, making the whole moment look almost magical. The queen froze. She had seen recordings before, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. The human's patience, the children's joy, the glowing lights that pulsed gently with their movement. It was beauty made visible. She said nothing. She simply watched. The dance of hands and light. Elias continued his lesson, unaware of his royal audience. He drew patterns in the air, and the orbs followed, leaving trails of gold light. He showed how each movement could mean something, how slow waves could mean peace, how sharp lines could mean excitement. Tira and Sen copied him perfectly. Their hands moved fast and graceful, their faces full of emotion. At one point, Elias stopped and signed, "Now, we make a story." He moved his hands, a flower in the dark. A little light finds it. They become friends. As he signed, the orbs responded, forming shapes of soft light. The girls watched with wide eyes, their expressions full of wonder. Then Sen added her own part. The light helps the flower grow. The orb glowed brighter, turning the small space into a warm sea of color. The queen felt her heart tighten. For all her empire's technology, not one machine had ever taught so gently, so kindly. The queen steps forward. When the story ended, Elias clapped his hands once. "Beautiful," he whispered. "You two made magic today." That was when the queen finally stepped forward. Elias turned and froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His daughters, seeing his sudden shock, turned too, and their eyes widened. There stood the Queen of Virella herself, glowing in the sunlight, her silver robe shining like the moon. Elias quickly stood and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he stammered. I didn't know." The queen lifted a gentle hand. "Rise, Elias Grant," she said softly. "I came not to frighten you, but to understand you." The girls clung to his sides, unsure what to do. The queen smiled kindly at them. "And these must be your daughters." Elias nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Tira and Sen." "They are beautiful," the queen said, lowering herself gracefully to their level. She spoke slowly, making sure to look into their eyes as she said, "Hello." The girls tilted their heads, not hearing her words. Elias signed to them quickly. "She says hello." The girls smiled shyly and signed back. "Hello, Queen," Elias translated softly. For a moment, the queen was speechless. She had met thousands of diplomats and teachers, but never had she seen such innocence and warmth in communication without sound. A lesson for the queen. The queen asked softly, "Will you show me how you teach?" Elias blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "You wish to learn, Your Majesty?" "Yes," she said simply. "Teach me as you teach them." Elias hesitated, but her calm eyes reassured him. Slowly, he nodded. He picked up one of the light orbs and handed it to her. "Hold it," he said. "Let it feel your heartbeat." The queen did so. The orb pulsed faintly in her palm. "Now," Elias signed, "make the sign for peace." He demonstrated with both hands, palms open, moving outward slowly. The queen copied him carefully. The orb glowed blue in response. She looked at it, surprised. "It reacts to the gesture," Elias nodded. "Yes, emotion changes light." He then guided her through a few more signs: love, hope, understanding. Each one made the orb shine differently, as if responding to her feeling. The queen's heart warmed. "It is not just language," she said softly. "It is art," Elias smiled gently. "It's connection. They cannot hear my voice, but they can feel my heart. Sometimes that is enough." The moment that changed everything. For a long time they stood together. The queen, the janitor, and his daughters, surrounded by glowing lights. The garden felt alive with silent beauty. When the lesson ended, the queen looked at him seriously. "Elias, you have done what no one in my empire has. You have given communication to those who had none, and you did it not with power but with love." Elias bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wanted them to know the world." The queen looked at Tira and Sen, who were now signing happily to each other, laughing as the orbs danced. "They already do," she said softly. "Because of you," she turned to her guards. "Send word to the palace. The Royal Academy will now support this man's work. His language will be studied by all." The guards bowed. Elias's eyes widened. "Your Majesty, I am just a janitor." The queen smiled warmly. "No, Elias. You are a teacher, not only to them but to us all." She placed a small crystal pendant in his hand. "This is the seal of light. With it you will have full support from the crown." Elias stared at it in disbelief. His daughters hugged his legs, smiling though they didn't fully understand. As the queen turned to leave, she looked back once more. "You taught without sound, yet spoke to every soul who sees you. That is the truest kind of power." And with that she walked away through the glowing garden, her robe trailing like silver mist. Elias stood still, holding the pendant tightly. His daughters looked up at him, curious. He knelt and signed, "Everything is going to change." They smiled, trusting him completely. Above them, the twin suns shone brighter than ever. And for the first time in the Empire's long history, a humble human janitor had taught a queen the language of the heart. The morning after Queen Virella's visit, a new energy filled the Royal Academy. Elias Grant arrived early, carrying his cleaning cart and, of course, his daughters. But the academy felt different, alive with whispers of excitement and curiosity. Word had already spread among the staff and students. The human janitor had taught the queen herself. Many were astonished, some doubtful, but most were eager to see him in action. The news had traveled quickly through the crystal halls and glowing towers. Elias tried to remain calm, though he could feel a subtle tension in the air. He had never sought attention, and he still believed that teaching his daughters quietly was enough. But change was coming, whether he was ready or not. A growing audience that afternoon, Elias led Tira and Sen into the garden. He set out the light orbs, arranging them carefully. Today he had a new plan. He wanted to show the girls how communication could travel farther than the eye or ear, how understanding could bridge worlds. As they began their lesson, he noticed that the garden wasn't empty. Scholars and students, silently observing from behind trees and crystal bushes, were fascinated. They watched as Elias moved his hands, his fingers drawing words in the air, and the orbs responded with soft glows. Some students whispered in excitement, "Look, they are understanding him. He is showing emotion through light." Elias didn't notice them. He focused entirely on the girls. "Today," he signed, "we learn the language of light." Explaining the concept, he picked up a gold orb and held it gently. "This orb responds to feeling," he signed. "Each emotion, each thought makes it shine in a different way. It is not just light. It is expression." Tira reached out to touch it. The orb glowed brighter. "Joy," Elias signed. Sen made a small wave with her hands. The orb pulsed rapidly. "Excitement," he signed. Then Elias arranged all three orbs in a triangle and traced lines in the air, creating glowing patterns. The girls followed, moving their hands in tandem with his. He signed slowly. "Language is not only words. Language is feeling. Language is understanding. And this is light. The students watching gasped quietly. This simple human had found a way to communicate emotion in a way that no Varelian device, machine or teacher had ever done before. Support from the palace within hours. A messenger arrived from the Queen's palace. A small scroll contained her words. Elias Grant has the full support of the Crown. Share your method. Teach all who wish to learn. Elias stared at the scroll. He never imagined such recognition. Yet he knew this wasn't about himself. It was about helping others understand. He nodded and began preparing for a larger demonstration. Over the next few days, students, scholars, and even diplomats visited the garden. Elias taught them the language of light, gestures, emotions, and orbs that pulsed with meaning. The Queen's seal ensured that no one dismissed him as a mere janitor. Slowly, the academy began to embrace his ideas. Teaching beyond the daughters, Elias's daughters were excited. They taught their new friends alongside their father, copying his movements and sharing what they had learned. A young Varelian boy named Kelvin struggled at first. He was skeptical, used to traditional sound-based learning, but when Elias gently placed his hand over the boy's chest and guided his movements, the orbs pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Kelvin's eyes widened. "I can feel it," he signed. Tira and Sen clapped silently. "You did it!" Word of the language of light spread throughout the academy. Deaf children from other parts of the city visited. Students with hearing could also benefit. Even the Varelian scholars admitted that the method was effective in ways their technology could not replicate. A new philosophy, Elias realized that his method was more than just teaching. It was changing the way the Empire thought about communication. Humans often felt powerless, but he had shown that understanding, patience, and creativity could overcome obstacles. He spent nights designing new devices, improved orbs, small crystal tablets, and hand guides. He called them emotion mirrors. Each device allowed light and gesture to travel farther, enabling learning across large spaces even beyond the academy. The Queen herself visited again, quietly observing the new demonstrations. She watched as deaf children and hearing students communicated together, forming bonds that transcended species and sound. "This is remarkable," she whispered to Loren. "He does not only teach, he unites hearts." Impact across the Empire. Over weeks, the method spread across Varelia. Schools incorporated the language of light into their programs. Children learned faster and more effectively. Teachers used the glowing orbs to explain complex emotions. Scientists began studying the system, realizing that humans had a unique ability to perceive and translate emotion. Elias's work became a symbol of human ingenuity and compassion. He, a janitor, had done what countless scholars and inventors had failed to accomplish: teach the heart. And yet, despite his rising fame, Elias remained humble. He continued to sweep the corridors, to fix broken devices, to play and laugh with his daughters. For him, the joy of learning and the happiness of Tira and Sen were more important than accolades or titles. The Garden of Wonders. One evening, Elias, the Queen, and the children stood together in the garden. The twin moons rose, casting a gentle glow on the trees and flowers. The orbs hovered around them, pulsing in soft colors. Elias signed, "See? Light can speak. Heart can speak. And the world can hear without a single sound." The Queen smiled. "And humans who seem so ordinary can teach the extraordinary." Elias looked at his daughters, then at the glowing orbs. "They are not ordinary," he signed. "We all have the power to teach, to love, to understand. The world only needs patience." That night, the Academy's gardens were alive with light, joy, and silent understanding. And for the first time, Varelians realized that the human spirit was capable of bridging worlds in ways they had never imagined. Months passed, and the Royal Academy of Varelia had changed forever. The language of light had become a part of daily life. Children communicated freely, teachers adapted their lessons, and scholars marveled at the human ingenuity that had started it all. Elias Grant continued his humble routine, sweeping halls and repairing broken orbs. Yet now, wherever he went, he was greeted with respect. Scholars nodded, students waved, and even dignitaries paused to watch him. But his focus remained on his daughters, Tira and Sen, whose bright eyes had inspired an empire. A royal ceremony. Queen Varela had called for a special ceremony in the central hall of the Academy. Crystal columns reflected the sunlight, and the twin moons shone faintly through the translucent ceiling. Scholars, students, diplomats, and children filled the space. Elias felt nervous. He was not used to attention. His daughters held his hands tightly, offering silent support. When the queen entered, the crowd fell silent. She moved gracefully to the center of the hall and addressed everyone. "Today we honor a human who has taught us the most important lesson," she said. "Not of machines, not of science, but of connection, patience, and understanding." All eyes turned to Elias. He bowed deeply. "A father's recognition," the queen continued. "Elias Grant has shown that communication is more than words. It is feeling. It is love. It is the bridge between hearts." She raised a small crystal medallion, engraved with the symbol of the Empire. "I bestow upon him the title of Royal Instructor of Light. His methods will be studied and taught across the Empire." Elias felt tears prick his eyes. His daughters squeezed his hands. They understood, even without words, that their father had changed the world. The power of understanding. Elias took a deep breath and signed to his daughters, "This is for all of us, my stars." Tira and Sen smiled and mirrored his gestures. They moved their hands in the signs for joy, hope, and love. The orbs around them glowed brightly, responding to the emotions of everyone in the hall. The queen watched, moved. "It is not only the human who teaches," she said. "It is all who open their hearts." A legacy across worlds. After the ceremony, schools across Virelia began implementing the language of light. Children who had never spoken now expressed themselves with confidence. Scholars studied the patterns of orbs and gestures, finding new ways to improve understanding. Even distant planets sent messages, requesting training in Elias's method. The small human janitor, once overlooked, had become a symbol of human potential across the galaxy. Elias never sought fame, but he had left a mark greater than any machine or weapon could. Humanity's heart, patience, and creativity had shone brighter than any star. A quiet moment. That night, Elias returned to the garden with his daughters. The twin moons rose and the orbs floated around them in gentle light. He knelt and signed, "I am proud of you both, and I am proud that we helped the world understand each other." Tira and Sen hugged him tightly. "We love you, Father," they signed. Elias smiled through tears. "And I love you, always." Above them the stars glimmered. The garden was peaceful, alive with light and joy. And somewhere in the Empire, the queen gazed at the moons and smiled, knowing that a janitor had taught her people a lesson. No throne, no army, and no technology could. The human spirit shines. The next morning, as Elias swept the academy halls, he paused for a moment. Children waved, scholars smiled, and even the queen's messenger nodded respectfully. He looked up at the twin suns. "We did it," he thought quietly. And in that simple act, he realized something profound. Humanity's greatest power was not strength, intelligence, or wealth. It was the capacity to understand, to teach, and to love. For Elias, a janitor of the Royal Academy, that was enough to change the world. The Empire had learned something greater than science or law. It had learned the heart of a human, and that heart would shine forever, lighting the way across galaxies yet to come.